Hey guys, it's Max. We just got in the brand new iPhone 12 Pro Max. It's been a long wait, and today I'm gonna be comparing it to my 11 Pro Max. And we're not only gonna talk about the typical things such as cameras and performance, but I'm gonna cover design and how comfortable is such a large phone. On top of that, we're gonna talk about the displays, we're gonna talk about speakers, 5G, and a lot more. Let's go ahead and open it up, and I have to be honest with you guys, my heart is actually beating a little bit. It's been over a month that I've been waiting, and my biggest concern is the size of this thing. I've been using the 12 Pro. I love the size. I just don't know if I'll be able to keep it and use it long term to enjoy the cameras. Now, first impressions, oh man. This reminds me, Vadim, of when we first opened up the 12 Pros. It feels so nice in the hand. I like it a lot more than I thought I would. Okay, can I compare it already? Let's feel this. Okay, I am very happy. I had to pause this there for a second. It doesn't feel as bulky as I thought it would. Sure, it does feel heavy. You feel the flat sides. It makes it feel a little bit thicker, even though it's actually not. But man, that is not bad. I actually have a little bit of a relief right now. Let me set this down for just a second, and I wanna briefly talk about chargers. I don't wanna waste time. Obviously, we don't have the charging brick anymore. Apple is not including this with the phone, even though they do with the budget iPad that's $300, which is weird. But I would suggest not getting Apple's, but picking up one of these Anchors. They're not a channel sponsor yet, but look how much smaller this is. They're both 20 watts. It's less expensive, basically the size of the 5-watter. And if you're gonna be using Magsafe, it actually charges faster than Apple's. Do you want proof? I actually have an ultimate charger comparison where I test out Magsafe and I test out a variety of chargers and show you guys the speed differences. Check that video out after you watch this one. As you guys could see, Magsafe, it's not new anymore, people know about it. I gotta say, even though the speeds aren't fantastic, which I cover there, it's still really enjoyable to use. And there's something very oddly satisfying about this just little click, and if the phone's on, you get a little ping. Oh, there you go, actually. It turned it on. I've also been using the wallet now for about a weekend with the 12 Pro, and I gotta say that I've actually really enjoyed it. It kind of fills in my hand where I hold it, gives me a little bit more grip. I've never had it fall off on accident. So let's see how this works with the 12 Pro Max. It's funny, it looks kind of small on here compared to the 12. And it doesn't feel as nice because there's an extra gap here that you feel compared to the 12. But it does give you a little bit more grip and some nice texture on the back. And now let's compare all of the exterior differences. I'm gonna start out by stacking them up next to each other. As you guys could tell, the 12 Pro Max is slightly taller. As far as the width, it seems to be identical. I know the 12 Pro Max is slightly wider by a hair. Comparing the sides, you could see that the power button is much larger now. And using the 12 Pro over the last couple of weeks, I love this new power button. It's nice and clicky. It's a lot larger. Reminds me of the S10e with the fingerprint reader built in, but no, we don't have Touch ID there. You'll also notice that we have this little plastic insert that is for 5G, which we'll talk about in just a bit. And the SIM card slot has actually been moved to the other side. And once again, these buttons are slightly larger and they're more clicky. Now, before I compare all of the differences in color, I have to say that I am shocked by how comfortable the 12 Pro Max is in my hand. Now, with the smaller phones, the 10s or the 11 Pro this size, with the round edges, your hands just kind of wrap around it really well. And then going to the 12 Pro, even though it is thinner technically, it just feels a lot more substantial in your hand. But now, I guess when your phone is this large, you just feel not as secure in the hand, whereas with the new square edges on this larger size, it actually feels better, and I'm so relieved about that. Comparing the gold stainless steel frame, you could tell that the 12 Pro Max does look more like actual gold. It's less orange, maybe a little bit more yellow, and it's brighter, it pops a little bit more, which I do like. And along with that, Apple said that this new gold has the toughest coating out of any of the different iPhone colors. Now, if we look at the back, it's very interesting. The 12 Pro Max the gold on the back, it just looks almost like white. It's very interesting. And then the 11 Pro Max, it's more gold looking. And what's funny is last year, I was wishing that this would be even more gold looking than it was. But I guess with the lighter back, it does make the sides pop a little bit more. Now you may have noticed some differences in the camera bumps, and the 12 Pro Max's is much bigger. That is because some of the lenses are larger, they are now faster, and of course, we have the much larger main sensor with active sensor stabilization, which is awesome. And along with that, the camera bumps do stick out more so, they're bigger. You'll also notice this black circle, which is the LiDAR sensor. Here's a few examples for you guys over the last few weeks with the 12 Pro, the differences it makes in portrait shots, and then also with video autofocus. It has been awesome. Now, one other difference is the microphone hole is tiny now compared to before. I was worried that the audio quality would be worse, but in my testing, it sounds identical. Now, if you haven't seen our ultimate camera comparison with the 12 Pro against the 11 Pro and even the 10S, go and check that out after this video. There's a lot of interesting differences, but we'll be comparing these two at the end. First, let's go ahead and flip these over and compare the displays. We now have that larger 6.7-inch screen. You guys could see the differences. It's definitely noticeable with the larger screen size. As you can see, the bezels are more slim on the 12 Pro, and that is because it's now completely flat. So we actually just have glass that meets this frame compared to having a little plastic insert. And because of that, you actually get a nice little edge of gold color, whereas with the 11 Pro, it kind of blends in with the sides and the bezel. Now the notch might look smaller on the new 12 Pro, but it's actually identical in size. It just looks smaller because we have extra space on the sides and up top here because the bezels are thinner. Now, as far as Face ID, nothing has changed. The sensors are identical, the speeds are identical, so no difference there. And now let's compare the displays. Some people say that these have identical displays, and that's not true. There's actually a surprising amount of differences. Now, they are both 60 Hertz, so unfortunately we don't have 120 Hertz in an iPhone, and that's probably because of battery life. We'll talk about that in just a bit. Now, obviously the screen is larger, so it's not the same panel, but one thing you guys may notice is that the new 12 Pro has a warmer white balance. The screen is warmer compared to the 11 Pro being cooler, and Apple's heading that way with all of their devices. Now, I do have True Tone turned on both of them, but even if I turn that off, you guys could still see the difference here. And the other difference is the color shift if you're viewing the phone off axis. As you guys could see, the 11 Pro and older OLED screens, they all turn blue when you look from the side, but the 12s are the first ones where they stay nice and consistent. And as far as brightness, I have both in manual and set to max, and they look identical, so no differences there. And as far as watching HDR videos, I also see no difference in HDR, but both of them look excellent. You have a great HDR viewing experience. The only difference is the 12 Pro Max does have a warmer color balance. And now let's compare the speakers. Apple didn't mention that there are any differences. I already know that there are with the regular 12 Pro, but let's put these head to head. You make sure to put on a pair of headphones and let's take a listen. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section below. I'll let you guys know what I heard. So there are a couple differences. The speakers have definitely been improved, even though Apple didn't tell us anything. It's most clear in the highs because they're very clear, they're very sharp. The mids and the bass, it's a little bit more rich, but it's not as significant of a difference. Now, in my previous test, I actually measured a 2 decibel difference with my Apple Watch, so it's definitely louder. And just judging on my past experience with the 12 Pro, the highs are just really crisp, and with some voices and some music, it might be a little bit too much depending on your ears, but in general, it's a nice improvement. And now let's get into performance. We're gonna start out by testing the data speeds. I'm gonna pop my SIM into the new 12 Pro. We're gonna open up our speed test app, and as you guys can see, just like before, the 12 Pro with 5G is showing 1 bar less of connectivity than the 11 Pro. We're connected to the same server. I'm gonna go ahead and hit run. And as you guys can see, the data speeds are massive. This is actually very similar to our 11 versus 12 Pro comparison. Now, once again, we have snow outside. We're in Spokane, we're in a concrete building, and that is some nice speed differences. Now, some people said you don't want to run them at the same time. Honestly, I've had a consistent result either way. There's, thousands of people connecting to the same tower, pulling data at the same time. And I do want to point out that I have a crazy in-depth LTE comparison, both with 5G and just standard LTE of the 12 Pro against the 11 Pro. I went around the whole city. I even tested tethering speeds, and there were some massive differences. You guys could check out that video if you want to know more about LTE. But overall, the 12 Pro, it is much better, even with LTE, because it's using a Snapdragon X55 modem, which is the best that's currently on the market, compared to an Intel modem with the 11 Pro Max. And as you guys know, Intel is falling a little bit behind now in a lot of different ways. And now let's compare the CPU and the graphics performance. I have Geekbench 5 opened up right here. We have Apple's A13 Bionic, which was already faster than all the Android processors. Now with the 12 Pro Max, we have the A14 Bionic. It actually just says ARM here. It's not updated. I'm gonna go ahead and run the CPU test, but one thing I wanna point out is the difference in RAM. We have 6 gigs compared to 4 gigs. Now, 4 gigs was not enough for somebody that is a heavy user, a power user. I kept having apps, they would close in the background, apps that I would use a couple hours ago, and sometimes even apps that I was just using. If I'd go into the camera app and I would take a photo or a few of them. Thankfully, with the 12 Pro, the last few weeks, it has been excellent with that 6 gigs of RAM. Apps are staying open. I don't have that issue anymore. Our scores are in, and I think this is the highest multi-core I've seen on an iPhone 12 yet. As far as single core, we're looking at 1331 compared to 1603. 1331 already beats out most MacBooks, my Mac Pro. 1603 is awesome, so here we have close to 25% improvement. And as far as multi-core, we're going from 3533 up to 4280. The highest score I have seen. Very great performance, and that's over 20% improvement. Now, one thing that we're not seeing here is the fact that the neural engine now has twice as many cores, and those are more powerful as well. So Apple is really focused on machine learning, not just regular CPU performance. Now, I'm also gonna test out video editing in just a bit, but first, let's run our metal test for the graphics. And here are the results. And to be honest, I was expecting a little bit more. We have 7447 compared to 9274. That's close to 25% improvement. So that is still a good improvement there. But what's very interesting is that if I go back to my history with the older version, iOS 13, we were looking at 6400, 6100, and then switching over to iOS 14, we have a massive gain in performance just because of optimization. So there's a chance we could get better performance in the future with the iPhone 12 Pro Max. Now, one thing I know is that the 12 Pros, even the regular 12s, they're using more power for graphics now. They're getting better performance, but using more power. So Vadim is gonna be doing a gaming comparison with the 11 Pro Max against the 12 Pro Max, and also looking at battery life when you're gaming. That could be very important. So if you guys wanna see that, make sure you guys subscribe below. And we're trying to hit 500K subscribers before the end of the year. So if you guys wanna help us out, we would definitely appreciate it. And now let's compare video editing. I have a project here that's a little bit over a minute long. And some of these clips are Dolby Vision HDR clips. As you guys can see, it's actually playing back in HDR. It might be blowing out the camera up there. Now, both are playing it back perfectly smoothly. And even though the iPhone 11 Pro can't shoot Dolby Vision, it could still display it on that OLED screen. Whereas the 12 Pro Max, it could shoot HDR up to 4K 60 FPS, which is awesome. And then you could take advantage of the display. So the A13 is not having any issues here. Let's go ahead and scroll and see if we notice any difference in smoothness. And it's really hard to tell. You guys let me know if you guys could tell any difference. Now I'm gonna go ahead, I saw a couple drop frames there. I'm gonna go ahead and add a theme to this, Blockbuster. Perfect, maybe we'll add a soundtrack to it. There you go, and then we're gonna go and export this. And it actually got started. We can already tell that the A14 is definitely speeding along here. It's almost done now, whereas the A13 is about halfway. So it looks like it took 46 seconds for a 1 minute and 13 second project, and some of this footage is 4K 60 with HDR. Both of them are done, and there's the final video, and as you see, it's actually saved in Dolby Vision HDR playing back, which is awesome. So our iPhone 12 Pro Max took 47 seconds, 11 Pro Max took 67 seconds, so that's a 45% improvement in speed, much higher than the 20 to 25% improvements that we saw in just raw CPU power. And now let's talk about the battery life. The Max models always have the best, they have the largest batteries, but this year, we actually lost almost 300 milliamp hours of battery, going from almost 4,000 to 3,687. That's because the phone is thinner. They had to put a smaller battery in there. Now, as far as battery life, I'm gonna be testing both of these and comparing them in my 1 week real world comparison and seeing if the 12 Pro Max keeps up with how great the 11 Pro Max was. Now, from what I've seen so far in terms of battery, Mr. Who's the Boss did his test, and there's only a half-hour difference between the two. And one thing to keep in mind is that he runs a bunch of games and even benchmarks that really draw a lot of power from the new graphics. So it's gonna be very interesting to see what kind of difference we get in the real world. And now let's get into the camera comparison. Now, right now I'm recording video. This is 4K using the front-facing cameras. And you guys let me know, do you guys notice a difference in terms of video quality? And also, how about the microphone quality? Let me know down in the comments section which one looks and which one sounds better. Now, the front sensors are exactly the same, but we have a software difference now because the 12 Pro Max has better deep fusion and smart HDR3. You guys let me know which one of these front-facing photos looks better to you. The same thing goes for the ultra wides. They're identical cameras, but because of deep fusion, we had some nice improvements in my previous tests. Another improvement is distortion. Take a look at those ceiling tiles. The 11 Pro Max has them warped, same thing with the table, whereas the 12 Pro Max, all the lines are really straight. The ultra wide, along with the front-facing camera, can now shoot night mode shots. You guys can see the differences here. They are massive, so this has been a great improvement. And thanks to LiDAR, you can shoot night mode portrait shots as well. Here's one comparing the Pro Maxes, and this can make a small improvement, or if it's really dark, here's a shot comparing my 12 Pro, and this is a huge difference here. And another difference is that for the first time ever, our telephoto lens is actually 2.5 times zoom, and that's something that is exclusive to the 12 Pro Max, so you guys can see that I'm closer here. Here's the difference if you're taking a portrait shot of a person, you guys can see how much closer it is. And then here's another photo if you're matching both of them up, and you guys can comment below telling me which one looks better in terms of image quality. Now here's another shot for you guys to compare the deep fusion and the low light performance. Can you tell any difference whatsoever? It's interesting that the 12 Pro Max has a f2.2 aperture now instead of an f2 for that telephoto lens, so that could hurt the low light performance a bit, but then again, with the newer software, that could make up for it. And here's a portrait shot of my Blackmagic Pocket 4K, and there's some definite differences other than just being more zoomed in, which I actually accounted for. Look at the bokeh up top. The bokeh is really much more substantial, and in general, there's a lot more blur that is being added. Let me go into the edit mode and see if there's a default. No, look, it actually defaults to the same f4.5. I thought maybe it would be a little different, but I guess just like with the real camera, if you have a longer telephoto lens, you will get more blur, so Apple actually accounted for that. That is very interesting. Now there's another difference I see here. Look right here between the little SSD mount. The iPhone 11 Pro wasn't able to actually cut that out, but the 12 Pro Max, it got all the cutouts perfectly, and I'm guessing that's because of the LiDAR sensor actually knowing a lot more depth information. Now, to be honest, this is actually too much blur on the 12 Pro Max. I mean, it's acting like a real lens because I was close to this camera, but the beauty of an iPhone is after the shot is taken, you can just go in here and turn this down, make the shot exactly how you want. There you go. Whereas with a regular camera, you can't do that. And now let's talk about the prices and our final verdict. The 12 Pro Max costs the same $1,099 as the 11 Pro Max did, so prices are the same, but we do get double the storage, 128 gigs compared to 64, and I would say in 2020, even 2019, 128 gig is really the minimum that you want. With the 11 Pro Max, you had to spend another $150 and you were forced to buy 256 gig. Of course, we do have 2 extra gigs of RAM, which is nice. That definitely helps. Now I have to mention that we did lose that power brick, which Apple is now selling for $19, but the cost to build a 12 Pro Max is a lot higher than the 11 Pro Max. We have the extra modem from Snapdragon, the best one, so that is a costly part. And then with that, we have the newer cameras and we have image stabilization in the main sensor, which costs more money as well. So overall, you are definitely getting a much better deal. Now, the other question is, should you upgrade from the 11 Pro Max to the 12 Pro Max? I would say absolutely. For me, just the speed differences in the LTE and 5G is huge. If you guys didn't see my 5G video, there's a lot of reasons there for tethering. That has been a massive improvement, but overall, this is an awesome flagship phone that hits almost all the boxes other than 120 Hertz. That's probably gonna be for next year. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. Is it worth upgrading? And if you guys wanna see my real world 1 week comparison, click that circle above and then you guys can help us try to reach 500K before the end of the year. If you guys want to see that 5G comparison or maybe our Magsafe charger comparison, we have a couple videos right over there. Thank you guys for watching. This has been Max, and I will see you in the next video.